When did you really see Conor McGregor come on the scene in the US? And what were your first thoughts on him?
This dude's obnoxious. Who the f*** were you? Who the f*** were you? In my first ever UFC, Randy Couture won the heavyweight championship in Shin, Yokohama, Japan, defeating Murray Smith. 2 men will enter the octagon, only one will leave.
Dana was fronting it, the front man.
Yep.
Did you see him change over the 17, 18, 19 years you worked with him?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
1000%.
How did you see Dana White change?
My favorite fighter of all time is Anderson.
Absolutely.
Because he was the Matrix.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with Joe Rogan?
We just had this chemistry on the air. We never really sat and broke down fights together. We sat and enjoyed each other's company. I don't believe in lucky punches. I believe in fortunate landings.
Can you see any similarities the way this new sport of bare knuckle boxing is going, how UFC MMA was back then?
1000%.
Okay.
It is brutal,
yeah.
but it's less dangerous than MMA as well.
Do you remember the day when you got told you're not involved in UFC again?
Yeah, it was. It is
Goldie, welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you very much, Dodge. It's great to be here.
Yeah, very much looking forward to this. I've heard lots about you. What have you done? Have you just flown in yesterday from Miami, from America? Wednesday, was it?
Yeah, I need that day.
Yeah, to relax.
And I think I still need another one, but the show's coming up, so,
I'm looking forward to the show. So just let everyone know, we're in Cardiff at the moment. There's a big show tomorrow with the BYB Extreme Fighting, Bare Knuckle Boxing, which I'm really looking forward to. But let's roll all the way back. What's it been like working for UFC for the past 20 years, your 20-year stint there?
It was amazing. Memories for a lifetime. But the most enjoyable part was the global takeover, if you will. And that was always Lorenzo Fertitta's thing, global domination. And so I went on this ride, Dodge, where it started almost like, a little bit backyard. When Senator McCain said it was human cockfighting, he would, in all fairness, the late John McCain wasn't that far off. But they came in, they embraced regulation when Zuffa came, when Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta and Dana first started. And then all of a sudden it started taking off. And then next thing you know, I'm in Skydome with 80,000 people in attendance. And I'm wondering, how do they see up there? But they just wanted to be there. And so the environment is always special with the UFC. When we just did the pay-per-views, Joe and I, back in the day, I really felt like I did the Super Bowl 12 times a year because it was that kind of anticipation. So it was an amazing run. Like I said, memories and friends for a lifetime. But the coolest part was to go on that journey as the soundtrack, as many people have said with Joe and I, to go on that journey as we continue to gain prominence and then look where it is today.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. So
what year did you get involved?
1997, Ultimate Japan, which was I think it was 17 and a half technically.
Yeah.
And then my last UFC was UFC 206, and add in a bunch of shows on Spike and a bunch of shows on Fox in between. I remember celebrating my 100th UFC. And
you did 100?
I did. Well, I probably did over 200. Yeah. But I remember my 100th because we had a big party celebration. It was actually UFC 91, Brock Lesnar and Randy Couture. And my first ever UFC, Randy Couture won the heavyweight championship in Shin, Yokohama, Japan, defeating Murray Smith. So all of a sudden, and Randy and I have stayed good friends. And I'll tell you what a kind person Randy is. He's doing this press conference. He's about to fight Brock. It's absolute huge card. And it's in the lobby at the MGM. They said, "What are you excited for?" He goes, "Well, I'm excited for Goldie. He's going to call his 100th UFC." And I'm like, "Oh, that's why he's Captain America. That's why he's so kind." But it was great. And, the one funny part of it is because we were gaining new viewers all the time, I would have to throw the same softballs to Joe on many shows. But
to you and Joe Rogan?
Yes. So you didn't want to offend those who have been loyal, but we had to teach the world the sport so they understood. And people used to always comment like, after all this time, how does he not know these things? And I'm just laughing at myself. I'm like, I know them, but it's better if Joe explains them. And then we go from there.
What did you see in the opportunity then? We're talking like a 19-year period of UFC. And we're talking like 1997. What did you see then when Dana White was really, really going balls in for something like this. Did you really believe his vision? What did you buy into then?
Well, I started with SEG before the sale, and the SEG years were interesting, but every show, my producer, Bruce Connell, may he rest in peace, Bruce, he would say, hey, we might want to stay and have another beer because this is probably the last one. Wow. I mean, it was on life support. It really was. And part of it was the ban from cable pay-per-view, which took away a lot of the potential, audience.
So just explain that. Yeah. So on these embryonic days of 97, was it hard to get the American audience to buy into this new sport, this new MMA sport at that time?
They had bought into it, Dodge. Yeah. And then when Senator McCain came out and said, hey, it's human cockfighting, all of a sudden, every cable operator in the U.S. no longer offered it through their pay-per-view service. Okay. Now, in this day and age, you say DirecTV or whatever, you think, oh, a lot of people have it. Well, no. 95% of the households in the U.S. back then were cable. So people weren't able to get it. I always say Canada saved the UFC because they didn't ban it there and they kept the numbers up enough for Bob Meyerowitz. And I give Bob a lot of credit to stick in there long enough to sell it for $2 million to Frank Fertitta, Lorenzo Fertitta, and Dana White. Yeah. And, Dana has, turned into an incredible leader and definitely Vince McMahon-like in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. He likes to have fun with it. But it was Frank and Lorenzo were already very successful businessmen, worked on the casinos and the gaming under their father, who founded Station Casinos. So all of a sudden we go to this dinner and we're in this back room in this Italian restaurant, of course, Italian restaurant, right? And I just knew they had money. I didn't realize how much, but I knew we had a chance. And then they opened it to questions and I said, well, Lorenzo, will we ever be on a billboard or a cab? He said, oh yeah, definitely. Man, did I underestimate what we would be on and where we would be. And it just, The Ultimate Fighter, like everybody says, changed everything. And then the mainstream kept coming. And I'll tell you when I knew we were really accepted around the world, but also, in the US, is when Anheuser-Busch, when Bud Light became a sponsor. Okay. That's when I knew we were for real.
And how many years did it take till that kick in? Was that the point when you thought, we've broken the back of this business model? Yeah. Okay. What year roughly was that?
That would have been about 2 years into the Fertitta reign. So it didn't take long with Zuffa to get
so early 2000s?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the mainstream came pretty quickly. Back in SCG days, I had Nylabone dog chews. I swear to God. And tonight's show brought to you by Nylabone dog chews. Or corn nuts. Corn to the core. Like, what are you saying that for? Because Joe asked me one time, like I said, it's on the card and they're sponsors, Joe. That's why. Yeah. But then all of a sudden we've got, Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch. Okay. And that really was. It told not only us, but it told everybody in the nation that, all right, this is now a mainstream sport. These are now accepted athletes. We understand it enough that if AB puts their money into it, they're thinking about it before they do so. And so that to me was a big sign.
Okay. And what was the difference between SEG and the deal that Dana and the brothers cut there?
SEG was the founder of the, at least they were the first broadcaster of the Ultimate Fighting Championship from UFC 1, from Hoist Gracie, choking people out, and people like Ken Shamrock going, oh, wait, I was beating the crap out of him. What just happened here? But Bob Meyerowitz was very successful in the music business and also had done some concerts via pay-per-view. So Bob became the broadcast partner to the rest of the staff, if you will. But then SEG turned out owning it early on. But Bob's experience in music and in pay-per-view is how we started it early on. But it was, two men will enter the octagon, only one will leave back then. And but it was supposed to be. It's like, Dodge, you're a boxer and I'm a wrestler. Yeah. It was more which discipline will reign supreme. Yeah. Where now you got to know every discipline. So that's how it was early on. And then it continued to grow, but it was just tough to get people to accept it because they didn't know about it. And then you lose the cable households. So it was a lot rougher. Obviously, it was early in the growth and some growing pains, to say the least. And once the Fertittas came in, it was, night and day, because they always thought mainstream. We're going to take this mainstream.
Yeah.
And, they sold for $4.2 billion. So it was a pretty good investment on $2 million.
Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, it worked out.
Where did you get the most fun on that period then? So you're saying like the big brands were coming in, Dana was fronting it, the front man.
Yep.
Did you see him change over the 17, 18, 19 years you worked with him?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
1000%.
How did you see Dana White change?
So there was an interview when James Wormy was still working with us. James Wormy was with SEG and was with Zuffa for about 3 years. And James would also do the in-house interviews and during the broadcast as well. And you've got to look it up because it's crazy. It's an interview with James and Dana during a fight. And Dana's voice is it's 3 octaves higher. He had hair. He was very timid. It was just amazing. And then to Dana's credit, he buddied up with Tony Robbins and a lot of different things to make him a better manager. But he also got more comfortable with it. I think Dana's coming out party, well, I know, was The Ultimate Fighter season 1. Yeah. Do you want to be a fucking fighter? Like that's when Dana all of a sudden became the Dana
Brand.
He is today. Yeah. Brash and became kind of a star along with the fighters. Yeah. But before that interview, if anybody's watching,
I need to check it out. So the interview's what? So let's make sure we check that out. Where is it?
It was with James Wormy. I can't remember what UFC it was, but it would have been after the Zuffa ownership. But it was early on, and it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. He was very skinny, a lot of hair, and his voice was not what it is
I'm going to have to check it out for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me some wonderful experiences you've had on the journey. Tell me some venues you've worked at, some of the stadiums you've done, tell me some of the countries you've been to.
Honestly, the UK and Ireland have been my favorites forever. Yeah. And it's because everybody in these 2 countries, if you will, but over here, they love a good fight.
Yeah.
And there's
proper
just
fight
a
fans.
proper fight.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the singing, they're singing Zombie, at the 3 Arena or what used to be the O2, Dublin and Belfast. We went to Belfast, but the crowds here are different. Yeah. And I always felt that energy. And especially you go to Manchester, you have Michael Bisping in the main event. It was bonkers. And we started like on US time for the pay-per-view. So the first fight was like at 11 p.m. Yeah. But they were there. They were cheering on. Going to Abu Dhabi was a trip. I mean, we go to Abu Dhabi. They have so much money over there. Like
they look after you well.
They did. But they built a stadium. We did the UFC and they took it down the next day. That's a good budget. Yeah, they had a good budget there. Yeah, that was a good budget.
Where in America have you been? Some stadiums you're like, my God, that atmosphere was off the charts.
Well, Madison Square Garden.
That's the day, right?
The world's most famous arena. Yeah. And it was off the charts. And one of them was Conor fighting there. And you would have thought it was MSG Dublin. Yeah. Like it really did. You felt like you were in Ireland. Yeah. You really did because he brought over so many people. And it's not a bad flight, if you're coming over to see Conor. The ones in Vegas were always great. But going to the different arenas, going to Chicago, the United Center was massive.
Capacity there?
Oh, absolutely.
What was it? What sort of numbers are we talking there?
So, basketball arena size. So, 17,000,
20,000,
18,000, 19 maybe. Yeah. Yep. We never had to hide the top balcony because there were always people there. And then we did a good job back in the day of having a fighter on the card who really would bring out the pride of a city. We were both at Staples Center and the Forum.
That's a big
the Fabulous Forum is, I'm old enough to remember, obviously, Magic Johnson in that great Showtime era and also Wayne Gretzky becoming an LA King. And that was a great spot. There were good spots in Florida. Yeah. But for me, it was very special to be in Chicago because I worked there for a long time. I watched the transition from Chicago Stadium to United Center, the house that Michael built, by the way. Yeah. And then MSG is just special. Have you been to Madison Square Garden?
Madison, no.
Yeah.
No.
Walk in, I'm telling you, Dodge, you feel
phenomenal.
You just feel
I can see it on screen. Yeah, I get the feeling.
And it's you go down to get into the arena. So if you walk by, I think 34th and 7th, you can walk right by and not see it. You see the train station, go, oh, where's MSG? And I'd done other sports out of there before. And so going to MSG was amazing.
That's the one, amazing. Isn't it?
Yeah. And Newark was actually cool too, because you got that New York vibe. It took a long time for the state of New York to approve mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Now, I think it was a lot more of, you had guys in the casino business in Vegas, unions. There might have been a little bit of that, battle, as opposed to, is this sport accepted? So we did a lot of shows in Newark, New Jersey, but we had huge billboards in Times Square, and we would do our press conference in Times Square. So we had everything but the fight in Manhattan. And that was very special as well.
What was it like for you, like being one of the main faces of it for years? What was it like for you knowing that walking down the street, everyone's clocking you, you've got this, all of a sudden you've got this unbelievable amount of fame?
It was humbling.
Yeah.
It was appreciated. It was always, there's never been a time, Dodge, where I've not had time. Like, how long does it take to take a picture?
Absolutely.
Even a signature, like in those fans that were kind enough to ask me for a picture or an autograph, whatever it might be, they were paying my wages back then, because we were all pay-per-view for a while.
Yeah.
So these are the people either getting a seat or pressing that red button to buy. Yeah. And so basically they were my lifeline. They were my salary. And I've just always appreciated that. My mom told me in my first job in Sarasota, Florida, back in the late 80s, she said, son, because they got a little attention there. That one of the older women came up and she goes, you're that guy in Channel 5. I like what you're doing. And my mom said, son, you might meet one person, you might meet 100, 100,000, might meet 1 million, but all of those people will only meet you once. Yeah. And the impression you leave on them is the one that they will tell everybody. And if you're nice, they'll tell 25 people. Yeah. And if you're not, they'll tell 2,500. Yeah.
What was your relationship like with Joe Rogan?
Just perfect. Yeah. It was absolutely perfect. We just had this chemistry on the air.
A good chemistry, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And we never really sat and broke down fights together. We sat and enjoyed each other's company. But sometimes you have partners who study together, and Joe and I we knew our lanes, and we had fun in our lanes, and we complemented each other. The one thing that Joe and I had in common, and will till the day we both die, is the energy and enthusiasm. That was the thing. And Joe was as big a fan of my work as I was of his. I was doing Minnesota Wild hockey in 2003 because the UFC had a lot of events, but not enough to be my only job at that time. And the one show I had to miss was the first show I ever missed was in Miami at UFC, because the Minnesota Wild were in the NHL playoffs. So I couldn't miss a playoff game. Joe did the show in Miami in my role, in the play-by-play role, with Phil Baroni, the New York Badass. And the next time I saw Joe, he goes, don't ever fucking do that to me again. I'm like, do what? He's like, I had Bruce in my ear counting down and this and that. Like I was like, shut it. And then he realized, Goldie, that's what you deal with all the time. The greatest compliment he ever paid me publicly is people don't know, and this is Joe, not me, but people don't know how good Mike Goldberg is because they don't know the chaos going on that he takes to the air and makes it seem just normal. Everything's good. Everything is chill.
How would you explain Joe Rogan? How would you explain Joe Rogan's personality and everything about him?
He's out there.
Yeah, he is.
He's way out there. Way out there. Yeah. There were conversations at dinners, which, 5 minutes in, I didn't understand a word, but he's always
straight talking, right?
Always straight talking, always well educated on the subjects in which he discusses. But it got I just play hockey and talk about guys and girls in their underwear fighting in a cage, Joe. Don't confuse me here. I actually was at a dinner when he met a guy named Brad Hunstable, who had a streaming service at the time called Ustream. It was when podcasts were first starting. I was actually at that dinner, and Joe started his first ever podcast on Ustream.
That must have been 2005?
Yep, absolutely. That's about right.
Yeah, okay.
That's about right.
So he's been smashing it for 20 years.
Absolutely. It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me because, again, he's very interested in everything that is in this universe. But he'll never be unprepared in any interview of any type that he'll do on his podcast. And that's the thing I respect the most about Joe is he does his homework. Yeah. And he asks the right questions. He's not afraid to ask the tough questions. And for people like you and I think you should, if you want to ask a question, ask it. That's the beauty of podcasts. He's kind about it, but then if somebody starts pushing back on him, he gets firm. Yeah. Like when he had to almost fight that guy on Fear Factor back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember when he was first coming out, I knew Joe the comedian more than the podcaster back then, because Joe would always combine like a comedy show on Friday with a UFC on Saturday. And that was always my rest before the show. I always go to Joe's comedy shows and had a blast with it. And that's what, if you pin Joe down and say you can only pick one, he would still pick comedian.
Yeah.
Now there is like 200 or 300 million reasons for him to pick podcasts.
Yeah.
And they're all dollar signs.
Yeah, of course. I was going to say the pound note. Yeah.
Yeah. But he still does his comedy.
Yeah.
And started at, the Comedy Store in Hollywood. He's very close to Phil Hartman. May he rest in peace. And that kind of got him into Fear Factor, which he never applied for. He was just the right guy.
Yeah.
My son back in the day called it Fear de Factor.
Yeah.
He's just a little dude. But Joe's a unique individual. He's highly educated. He's highly thoughtful. And like, it was always love you, brother, love you too. Like my powerful partner. So we had an amazing relationship. We had a lot of fun on the air too.
How did your relationship end with Dana White and the UFC?
Unexpectedly, I think is one way I would put it. Unfortunately, my contract was up the same time the sale happened.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that was done is there were a lot of cuts. There were over 125 people let go.
Was there?
Yes. I'm the one that gets talked about because I'm the one who had the job in which people saw.
The face.
But I'm no more important than the director of merchandising or the social media manager that all lost their jobs. I felt for everyone. And I know in his heart that Lorenzo's a businessman, so he had to go on to the next thing. But Lorenzo's all about family.
Yeah.
And he had built this family over the years in which he was in charge of Zuffa. And I know it broke his heart to see that happen. But what corporation comes in and takes over where jobs no longer exist? I had put myself in a great position financially due to my tenure. I think that had a lot to do with it. The timing of my contract had a lot to do with it. My mom for a year kept saying, well, what about this sale? And my mom's my dad was the business guy. My mom's mom, and I'm like, Mom, you don't have to fix things that aren't broken. Joe and I aren't broken. But we were broken up, unfortunately. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult for me.
Do you remember the day when you got told you're not involved in UFC again?
Yeah, it was probably around December 1st of that year. And I had the rest of the month. The crazy thing, though, and I would never do it, they must have known that, I was on 2 or 3 more shows after I knew that my future was not going to be with the UFC at the first of the year. I could have gone off. I could have been stupid. I could have said stuff. But then again, who am I hurting if I do that? I'm hurting myself for the next job. Of course, for the next job. Yeah. So I knew for about a month. I was shocked by the call.
Were you gutted?
Yeah. Oh, properly. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I put my.
Well, you put 19 years into this to build it to what it was. You played your part.
Yep. Yeah, and we had grown together.
Yeah. How did you get a call? Was it an email? Was it a text message?
Craig Borsari called me.
Yeah.
He's in charge of broadcasting.
And his words were?
Goldie, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we're not going to renew your contract. And I was like, wow, really? And it was a tough call for him too, which I love and admire him for the fact that he was my friend. He is my friend. Yeah. But Craig just told me that, we're not going to renew your contract. And it did. It was bad time. If I would have had another year on my contract, if I would have had another...
You could have planned a bit more.
Of course. Or they wouldn't have made the change because they would have had to buy me out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the dates just didn't gel.
Yeah.
It didn't gel. And I was coming off a 5-year deal too.
So it was a 5...
Yeah.
How much did they pay? How much did they pay you for 5 years?
It was 7
it tasty?
figures.
Was it 7 figures?
Yeah. At the end it was,
Per year or over the 5 years?
Per year.
Was it?
Yeah. No, well, not early in the war.
Yeah, no, but
over that one was a good juicy deal. Yeah. It was a juicy deal.
That's a nice deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I worked up to it. It didn't start there.
Yeah. You earned the right for that.
Yeah. Well, I was very thankful for it.
Yeah.
But we were getting to the point of you never take boxing away.
Yeah.
But my agent at the time kind of said, all right, well, Goldie's kind of like Jim Lampley. And Jim Lampley gets more for boxing. So got to be in that type of stratosphere if that's the way you're going to produce the show. Now I probably made millions less than Joe, and now I make hundreds millions less than Joe. But yeah, it was wonderful.
So an amazing career with that UFC.
No question.
When you got that phone call and you had to have that harsh chat, obviously straight away it must have been like a kidney punch of you're joking me.
Yeah.
Did you ever pick up the phone to Dana and say, "Why, mate"?
I didn't say why. I said thank you. You know, the decision had been made. Because I asked Craig that. I mean, is this a final decision? And the decision had been made. And so I just respected the decision. And I just thanked Dana. I thanked him for the great run. I thanked him for taking care of me. I thanked him for being kind to my family. I just thanked him. I wasn't going to change anybody's mind.
Yeah.
And more than anything, I did know why. Because the new owners are coming in. If Lorenzo Fertitta were still there today, I would still be there. Okay. I would still be there.
But why would they get rid of 125 staff? They want to reduce the wage bill to then package it up and say, right, you're now buying it? And that was purely...
What did they say? The first interest payment was like $400 million. Yeah. Well, $4.2 billion purchase.
Yeah.
That's why there were the cut. And I'm sure that Jon at the time was he didn't have the tenure I had, so it was a less expensive option. And that's not being rude or anything to Jon, because he does a great job. But, you know, where can we cut? Well, we can save money here as well. And there was always a thought that Joe's Joe, regardless of who he works with. I humbly disagree.
You're saying Joe Rogan.
Joe, but Joe never said it, but others would think, well, you could put Joe with anybody.
Yeah, okay.
And it'll be the same.
Okay.
And it's not.
That's not.
It's not.
Did Joe ever phone you up and go, sorry, mate, I'm gutted because us two have got a great partnership here?
No question.
Yeah.
I mean, both of us were, like, after we did that show, 207, when Amanda Nunes beat Ronda Rousey, I mean, we're all up in the octagon taking pictures, and we're all in tears.
Yeah.
Like, Joe and I are back in, you know, the dressing room for an hour and a half just in tears. Yeah. Like, it was the end of a great relationship, but not the end of a friendship. Yeah. It was just the end of a working relationship. Yeah. But Joe was gutted. I was gutted. Our producer, Bruce Connell, was gutted. Like, we were all gutted. And I appreciate the fact that so many people were there for me.
Massive respect to you for not reacting in a way that some people could react.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. I got a lot of book offers.
I'm
after
sure.
that, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. When did you really see Conor McGregor come on the scene in the US? And what were your first thoughts on him?
This dude's obnoxious.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? We got a press conference with like 12 champions, and he's like, they ask a question, Jon Jones, who the fuck is that guy? I'll fucking tell you. I'll fucking go. Who the fuck are you? Right away, because he just had that way of selling fights.
Yeah.
Now, that said, the early Conor, I don't want to say he was more humble, but less outspoken.
Yeah.
But you could tell he could still sell a fight. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, great. He never missed with that left hand. Never missed with the left hand.
Super sharp, wasn't it?
I mean,
Jesus.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. And so as it grew, people like either their hero or the villain. Because you can either watch Tito Ortiz, I always say, wore the black hat the best.
Yeah.
Because some wanted to watch Tito win. Yeah. Some wanted to watch him get his ass kicked. But guess what they all did? They all got the pay-per-view and they watched. Yeah. And Conor became polarizing in that way. Obviously an entire nation never wanted him to lose. Anybody who had any Irish in him and, anywhere else didn't want him to lose. But yeah, he was able to sell the fight and he was able to make it exciting. And he was an exciting fighter. So it didn't take long to know that he was special.
And he come into some serious money very quickly, didn't he?
Big time.
Serious money.
Big time. And, for years, and it's still customary that the fighters in the co-main, the big names on a pay-per-view get part of the pay-per-view. Yeah. Well, when you're Conor, and other than Brock Lesnar at the time, when you're Conor and you're getting the most buys on your fights and your pay-per-views, that's a hell of a bonus. Yeah. That's where he made his money early on, because they were paying him, but not like, they pay the guys and the women today. It was the pay-per-view bonus. That's right. Conor was bringing eyeballs in from all over, and he'd get his, even if it's 3% of that revenue, It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money.
Did you see Conor McGregor change with the more money he earned?
I'll tell you two things. First of all, he's never changed with me. I was doing a Bellator in Dublin, and basically it was SBG against everybody else. I mean, John Kavanagh had the roster up and down. Conor was there, supporting his teammates. I saw him, and I went, "Hey, what's up, Conor?" I gave him a big hug. We got a picture. And I said to John Kavanagh, I said, "Man, Conor still loves me. Like, he's still cool." And John goes, "Goldie, what do you expect? Like, really, like, what do you expect?" I was good to Conor. Yeah. Conor was good to me. I always saw the humble Conor. Yeah. Very humble in defeat until the Dustin Poirier fight. Yeah. Where it became nasty. But yeah, then the outside of Conor is it just makes you shake your head. Like, why? Why? You have all this money, you have this greatness, you have a family, you have a beautiful wife. I get it. The more money you have, the more you feel like you're untouchable. And I think that's a big part of Conor's growth. And also, as you may know, he grew up in a tough part of Ireland. Very tough part. Yeah. And so you're talking about a guy who grew up very humble.
Who went to the US by himself with his wife.
Correct.
That's powerful, right?
Exactly.
And I've got a big shout out for his wife. Yeah. My God, to stick by him for everything that he's gone through.
I'm telling you.
Huge respect.
She's an angel. Yeah, she really is. And then, just to sidebar on Conor, Roadhouse, the remake. Horrible movie, by the way. Bring me back Patrick Swayze. Sam Elliott, like, bring me back to the first one. Yeah. Because they never really fought in the Roadhouse. They fought in the street. So Conor comes in and he's like a main star. Yeah. All Conor did was be himself. Fucking kick your ass. Fucking fight. Let's fucking go. Yeah. They don't fucking tell that to me. Yeah. And I'm like, look at that. That's a good role right there, because you didn't have to study. You just got to be yourself in the movie, which I always found comical. But nobody's Conor better than Conor. If I saw him today, I'd still give him love. Still give him love. But yeah, he's made some decisions that I'm sure he regrets. And it's a shame to see the things that have come out with Conor in his public life in the last few years. It's heartbreaking for us who knew him win. Yeah. And that's tough for me.
Yeah. How did the US take Conor McGregor?
They loved him.
They loved him.
They loved him because of the Irish.
Are they quite easy to turn on him as well?
Oh, yeah.
With what's happened over the last few months?
Oh, you know who's turned on him the most?
Go on.
Ireland.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's not Ireland's, favorite son anymore at all. At all. Because Ireland feels like he's embarrassed the country. At first he represented the country beautifully, but then some of the things he's done, and we're not talking out of school because they've been in public. And when you get that type of fame in this day and age, and everybody's got a cell phone, you're never going to get away with anything. And you're going to be videoing Conor if he's just dancing because it's Conor McGregor. But yeah, I mean, Ireland more than anyone is embarrassed by a lot of things he's done. Yeah. And so they are not as in love with him as they were at one point. But he fought in Boston. He fought in Boston against Dennis Seaver. Well, you got the Southies. You got the North side with the Italians. You got all the Irish in South Boston. You got the Southies. Well, he was the hero there, especially with Dennis Seaver being German. He was the hero. And anywhere else, it was, I swear to God, it was like Dublin just continued to travel.
Dublin on tour, wasn't it?
It was. And they would come, and the fans, much like we talked about earlier, were more boisterous. Yeah. They were more vocal. Yeah. And thus you thought, like, wow, welcome to Madison Square Garden in Dublin, Ireland. So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Could you see the change in him when you knew that once he'd been injured, when he was using drink and drugs a lot more? Could you personally see the change in him?
Absolutely, right away. And I didn't see it firsthand because I wouldn't, even if I were still with the UFC at the time, I wouldn't have seen it firsthand because Conor was at home, he was on his yacht, whatever he was doing. But yeah, I from the first mistake, if you will, that he made, or the first thing he regrets doing or saying, or the way he acted in a bar, whatever it might be. And it does. It
tarnishes.
Yeah, it does tarnish it. Yeah. And I'm as big a Conor fan as anybody else. Yeah. And again, I judge it on how he treated me and how I treated him. But it's hard to overlook some of the things now. I just wish he'd just appreciate everything and just like, you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
You've done it. You
done it.
were brash.
Ticked every box.
Just like, and if you do, like, don't do it in a bar or don't do it in a place where everybody's got a cell phone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now with he's with the enemy, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm an Ohio State guy. I don't say the name of that team up north.
Yeah.
So, BKFC's like that team up north.
But that's an interesting one. Do you know you're now working for BYB?
Yep.
Backyard Brawls. Do you remember when Conor thought you were working for BKFC and put a massive shout out to you on a tweet going, yeah, Goldie's back, BKFC. And then he realised that's the companies he with, but you weren't. You were the competitor.
I love that you brought it up because I was just about to share. So you saw it,
Yeah.
Fucking Mike Goldberg's back. Fucking Mike Goldberg. Fucking then Paulie. Shut your fucking face. Shut your fucking face. When he's talking about Paulie.
Yeah.
And then back to me. Fucking Mike Goldberg's back. Fuck. But you're right.
Yeah.
He thought he bought into the company that I was working for. And Dada 5000.
We've had Dada 5000 on today.
Very
good
nice
guy.
Oh, such a big teddy bear.
Guy.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
Great vision, very humble.
Yeah. Very creative mind.
Very creative. But he took a screenshot or he screen recorded it.
Yeah.
So it lived because all of a sudden it was down. It was down. And I can just picture the phone call from Dave Feldman what? What are you doing? Oh, Goldie. Oh, okay.
It's the wrong one.
Yeah. And really, they probably had to take it down because
Yeah.
Conor was probably having a few cocktails,
Yeah.
all made by his own companies.
Yeah.
But he was having a few cocktails, so he wasn't going to take it down. But it was really, you talk about Conor and the things.
It's a compliment, right?
It was a huge compliment.
Yeah.
It was an absolute huge compliment that he felt that way about me and my work still. But it was funny.
Imagine, right? You just paid him $3 or $4 million to come onto your brand BKFC, and he's gone online and bigged the opposition up.
I know.
Like bonkers.
Well,
right?
and that also tells you how much money Conor has.
Yeah.
Because he's not sure who he just invested in, right? Or who invested in him, right?
Yeah. What did he get in the end? Didn't he get $4 million to go for BKFC? And 10% shares?
That's probably it. Yeah. That's probably it. And now he's that different Conor.
Yeah.
It sells still, but a lot of people are over it.
Yeah.
Again, I love him and I don't say it rudely, but is it good or bad? Is it good or bad for them when Mike Perry boxes, a guy twice his size and Jake Paul gets his rib broken in round 1, but still fights the fight. And then Conor says, you're fired. Why? Mike Perry was the one making you and everybody else all the money. He was the one generating the most income at the time for the company and for himself. So some of the things there really come out of left field. I'm sure that Dave has had to bite his lip a few times, but he also, if he's on there doing something, you've got the 10 or 20 million followers also watching what Conor's doing. But it's funny you brought that up. I'm glad you saw that. It was amazing.
It was amazing.
I still have it saved on my phone.
I was in shock thinking, mate, you got that completely wrong.
Oh my God. Wow. Then for a second, I'm like, did Conor invest in other guys? I'm texting Mike Vasquez, our owner. I'm like, Mike, we got Conor?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Hoagie and Mike Goldberg.
He's done a massive favour, hasn't he, to BYB for that? Imagine how good
really
you'd be, though. What's your relationship? How would you explain Dave Feldman? Because I'm hearing lots of different stories about Dave as a personality, and I haven't heard anything where someone's gone, oh, you know what, he's bang on, he's a cracking bloke. People have been a little bit different when they spoke to me about him.
I don't know him very well.
Okay.
I truly don't know him very well. But when Bellator went to Showtime, and because Mauro Ronaldo was full-time at Showtime, I had done, every Bellator for 2 years. Yeah. But when Bellator went to Showtime, the Showtime people took over.
Okay.
It was kind of a broadcast production, takeover as opposed to anything else. And I didn't have a job at that point with Bellator went away. And immediately BKFC reached out to me.
Oh, they did they?
Absolutely. They direct messaged me on Instagram. Yeah. They said, man, we would love you to talk to our boss, and would you be interested? And of course, at that time, I'm interested. I need a job.
I'm a free agent.
Got kids, Yeah. Yep. And so I talked to him, and this is before I met Mike. But I talked to him.
Mike Vasquez
who's
a great guy.
He's the best.
Mate.
He's the kindest man I've ever met.
And he's straight talking.
Yes.
And he'll shake a hand and the deal's done.
There's no question.
No
question. It's family. It's family to him.
Love that.
His favorite line, teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is true. But I talked to Dave, and he talked about like me working with Sean Wheelock, and I kind of had to say, well, I can't do the Chris Lytle job. But Sean is actually so well-versed that Sean could be an analyst. And so David kind of talked about working with Sean, and then Chris going and being the third man or being the host in that. And I give Sean props. Sean wanted to keep the play-by-play on his headset, and I respect that.
Yeah.
And Sean's been very good for B at KFC and helping them and getting regulated in different states. And so it just wasn't meant to be. Same time, Mike Vasquez invites me down to just see a show. It was BYB 6, I think. We were just talking about it. And I came down. We hit it off right away.
Yeah.
Do you want to work for us? And that was Paulie Malinagi's first show.
Right, okay.
So I knew they were like legit because they had Al Bernstein on some shows before that. So they were getting some true boxing people, some of the biggest personalities in boxing. And love working with Paulie. Paulie's just, the boxing version of Joe in a lot of ways.
Nice little character.
Oh yeah. But he likes other sports where Joe would be the first to say, I don't like any other sport.
Yeah.
So then I met Mike, and then I started with BYB, and I'm going on like 5 years now. Yeah.
What a lovely brand it's turning into. When you look at the brand you're working with at the moment, so the Backyard Brawls with Dada 5000, Mike Vasquez, the team you're building around, it feels like it's a real tight little family.
Yes.
When you look back at sort of like the 20 years you worked for UFC, can you see any similarities in sort of like the hockey stick curve, the way this new sport of bare knuckle boxing is going, how UFC MMA was back then?
1,000%.
Okay.
1,000%. We're starting to get acceptance. We're starting to spread the word. People are realizing it's not barbaric, which it took them a long time. It is brutal, but it's less dangerous than MMA as well, because you're going to get hit a couple times. It's brutal because skin on skin, you get cut.
Bone on bone. And they're straight cuts, aren't they? So there's more blood, I take it.
It's like the slicing elbow in MMA.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of blood, you think, and then, you'll see a cut man once in a while. You've been around it a long time. You see a cut man like work it, and then it's like this. But when the mojo is going and your heart's beating 1,000 miles an hour, you're going to bleed all over the place. Like Slapshot, bleed all over them. Let them know you're there. One of my favorite movies, being a hockey guy. And that's been the case at times. My notes are not clean. Yeah. Sometimes at home, it's like blood stained and stuff. I put them in my stuff, and then I get them out of my way real quickly. Paulie, of all people, professional boxer, he's the one who has a barbershop smock with a BYB logo on that he wears the whole time. And before that, he used to pull up like the black curtain on the table.
To cover himself.
To cover himself. Yeah. It was like an Italian dinner is what it was. It was like Sunday dinner. Yeah. He's Sicilian, it's like Sunday dinner, and everybody wants to make sure that the gravy, if you're a true Italian, the gravy doesn't splash all over you. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, Paulie, he's never wanted to get bled on. Never wanted to get bled on. But to your point, absolutely 1,000%. The best times in the UFC weren't really when we were reaching the pinnacle and the biggest. Yeah. And I say the best times, meaning it used to always be everybody gathered together after the show, even a hotel bar, whatever it was, but you were a family. Yeah. And we still remained a family at the UFC, but then this fighter has an engagement at one place, on the strip, and this person has, and so it was so spread out. Yeah. Our production team always stayed together, but the true family kind of started to go away. And that's just growth.
That's just business and growth.
That's just growth,
It comes down to money as well.
Of course.
When there's more money involved, it comes down to bottom line rather than actually building the UFC, the brand as a family, enjoying the journey and how you become a better person on that journey and who you become. Yeah. That's the fun bit.
And that is.
When you're getting to look at the bottom numbers and figures and everyone's going, we're down, pay-per-views down 10,000 people. Why are we doing that? Whose problem is it? It comes a bit sort of a changed vibe, doesn't it?
It absolutely
does. Did you feel that?
I didn't, because I think I was isolated from it by Lorenzo.
Okay.
I just knew we were massive. And I knew by, again, humbly, but I knew by what you talked about earlier, pictures and attention. And, we had a show in London where we did a big thing in an exposition hall. So we did a big, expo, if you will, for 3 days in London before we had a show in London. And my son at the time was probably 8 or 9 years old. And I'm getting stopped a lot, and Cole goes, Dad, I wish you were still in hockey, because I did about 900 games. Exactly. Because no one would recognize you. I'm hungry and we can't get out of here. And he's 9.
Yeah.
He's 9. He's 24 now, works with us here at BYB.
Does he?
Yeah. Yeah. Doing a great job. Still gives his dad shit.
Yeah.
But it was a really cute thing for him to say at the time. I don't want to do this. Don't do this, Dad. Go back to hockey.
Has Joe Rogan ever reached out to you to come on the podcast?
He hasn't. And it's something I don't want to say I don't care, but it doesn't affect me one way or the other. I'd be happy to do it anytime. I'd be honored to do it.
I think it would make a great episode.
I think it would be incredible.
Yeah.
Because he and I would start remembering and going down memory lane and telling crazy stories, and he'd make fun of how much I peed during the broadcast or If Joe Rogan's listening out there and Goldie gets an invite on there, would you smoke a spliff with him? Again?
Yeah. Quality.
Yeah. But I don't know if I could do it like he does and then talk.
Because you don't know whether you're going to talk a load of tosh or whether you're going to go on one. Or
he used to have the little strips like Listerine, and that was easier for me, I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, literally. Yeah. So when he had the little gummies or that, it was, it was same effect, but less obvious and less distasteful, if you will, for me. But we used to have fun.
Amazing.
We used to have fun in that regard. And early on, when I was still with UFC, I actually, I did not want to go on Joe's podcast because I knew that we would be real and that I would be put in a position where I couldn't be politically correct. And I didn't want to do that to Joe. Because that's not fair, because his podcast is a different forum. But we all have things that we keep within our own house.
Were you a party boy in your day?
Yes. Not just more drinking, not anything else really. Once in a while with Joe. But I'm a hockey player. So I grew up learning to say fuck in every single sentence and to drink as much as I could.
Goes hand in hand.
It does.
Same as rugby players.
Right. If you're going to play hockey and be good at it, you need to say fuck. But it's not always bad. Like, fucking A, boys, nice play. Let's fucking go. It's a versatile word,
absolutely.
Really. It's a versatile word.
Absolutely. Give me your opinion on, do you think Tom Aspinall could beat Jon Jones today?
Potentially, yes. And I recently talked to Jon because we had the BYB in Albuquerque, and he was kind of sharing with, it's more, do you want to train again at this point? Because he's the GOAT. He's the absolute GOAT. I'm glad they reversed the DQ against Matt Hamill. I called that fight. And really, he was elbowing from the side properly, and they should have stopped the fight before the illegal elbow came down, because Matt was... you got to be able to intelligently defend yourself, and Matt was past that point. I think Tom is, a younger, stronger version of where Jon is today. I will say that Jon doesn't have a ton of miles on him because he was so dominant. He hardly got hit, other than in the heavyweight fight, other than Alexander Gustafsson. That was a war in Toronto, but. I don't know if we'll see that fight. Do
you think like Jon Jones at an age now, he's seeing Tom Aspinall come through as an absolute beast from Manchester, England, hungry as he wants to take on the big dog, the GOAT. Do you think that Jon Jones is at a point where he's actually going, I don't fancy it because I think he can beat me?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I won't say that conversation was had, but that conversation was never had with when I spoke to Jon. But that's just respect. That's just respect. And Tom is at the prime, and Jon's always going to be prime, but he's past his true prime. And also, what else is there for him?
He's won everything. No, I hear you. Yeah.
What do you go out with?
Yeah.
And to me, the fight with Stipe that's walking down memory lane.
Yeah.
That's an iconic fight because they're both champions, different weight classes. Now Jon, of course, the heavyweight champ. But that's kind of the way to go out, if you will. And that's no disrespect to Jon and none to Tom. Actually, it's huge respect for Tom.
Huge Tom, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you were Tom,
yeah.
If I was Tom now, I'd be gutted. I want him.
Yeah.
I want him because that's going to make me go,
no question.
Yeah.
No question.
You know, it must be frustrating for Tom Aspinall going, just give me the fight.
Yeah.
I'll pay you whatever you want. I think that the pay-per-view would be enormous.
No question. And Jon makes a lot nowadays.
Does he need the money, Jon?
No, absolutely
So if Jon was offered 50 mil,
he might do it.
He would look at that.
Yeah,
okay.
He might do it.
Okay.
I asked him about Bareknuckle. And he's like, nah, no way. No way. And then you can say, well, 50 million for this fight. And he'd still be like, nah, you got that in the bank and then some, So Jon's not financially strapped and never will be at this point. He's earned every dollar.
Okay.
Because it takes a unique man or woman to go in there and do what the men and women do in MMA and bare knuckle and boxing, combat sports, in general.
Yeah.
But I think it is a proper send-off for Jon to fight Stipe and to have it be the fight it was and see Jon dominate again at a different weight class. Let's let that be the final memory.
Yeah, okay.
And again, I know why Tom wants to fight him. I know why anybody would want to fight him. You beat the GOAT, all of a sudden you beat the GOAT.
Yeah.
And that'll never be taken away from you.
Yeah.
But did you beat the GOAT in his prime?
In his prime, that's the bit, isn't it? Maybe someone fighting Mike Tyson in his latter years.
Correct.
I beat him, but you look at the step. How old was he?
Yeah.
Like
well, Anthony Pettis, boxing against Superman, Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah.
Back in the day, he light Anthony up.
Yeah.
Back in I have my thoughts. I'm sure you do too about the Jake Paul Tyson fight. And
sad.
Didn't like it. It is sad. It was sad.
Good
it was
payday.
Really hard for me to watch.
Good
Great payday. Bought a $13 million mansion in Florida.
Yeah.
Off that fight.
Mike.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he had money left over. I think he got 20 million and Jake got 40 plus whatever else came.
Bloody hell. You can see why he took it. Jesus. And
without a doubt.
Do you know, even when I was watching him on Instagram and watching, Mike Tyson was training like a beast. That was good enough for me just to see him train again, hitting the bag and whatever. I was like, wow. But, being physically fit in the gym is very different to standing in the ring, right?
Very much so. And
fitness.
Roy was commentating and he pointed that out.
Yeah.
And he looked at Mike's legs and they weren't as stable
strong
as they were back in the day. And smart feet, smart fighter, the whole bit. It's like the late Herb Brooks said, the legs feed the wolf.
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to watch though, because I am a Tyson fan and you are as well.
Yeah.
We all are. And early on it looked good. People have said it's fixed. It was scripted. I don't know. Yeah. And I don't care. All I know is if it was a bad script for Mike to accept.
Yeah.
Because that's not the way to go out. And then I will say, on the broadcast, in the final minute of that fight, I won't say the name, but people would know they were vocal.
Yeah.
And to me, the best play-by-play guys in the world know when not to talk.
Yeah.
If they always taught me, if you're fighting the crowd, shut up, because that's when the crowd's at its best. Let the director make his money. In that final minute, there was some commentary, and I'm telling you what, Dodge, I would have laid the fuck out. That's Mike Tyson, maybe the last time we're going to see him in the ring. Yeah. I would have said not a single word, and I would have done this with my partners too, like respectfully. I've been like, let it breathe. And that it may be because I'm a broadcaster and so I see it in a different way. That bothered me, but the whole thing just was, it was sad. Because that wasn't Mike, and that wasn't the Mike we saw training.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I've got to give respect to Jake Paul at the end, because I think he could have knocked him out towards the end. He was just like, he didn't want to do it out of respect. Right. I mean, I'm fighting someone a lot older than me.
Yes.
So.
And I agree with you in that regard. I agree with you in that regard.
What was said on that commentary, that last minute, that you've heard?
Just the whole career of not Mike Tyson and all the MMA big fights and Pride and Japan and the things that I've called, the things that I've done, blah, 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 blah. It's not about you right now. It's never about us. It's about what's in front of us. Never about us. If a broadcaster makes it about themselves, then he's doing a disservice to everybody. I have great relationships with every single fighter still because I did them right.
Yeah.
You know, I represented them. I did them right.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
You were straight talking.
Yeah.
And they had respect and you had respect. Yeah.
Exactly. And if there was a negative to be thrown at Joe, you can say something, you know, negative in a nice way.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a dick about it. Just make it, respect what they're going through. But yeah, it's not their night. And then, you know, Joe was less filtered than I was. But then again, that's not my role as a play-by-play guy.
Yeah.
It's Joe's. And so Joe can take it wherever he wants to take it. But I would hand it off to him with, man, this isn't the, I don't even want to say Jon Jones because Jon was always there. This wasn't the Anderson Silva that we saw before.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, BJ Penn when he started to struggle at the end of his career. And so to your point, BJ stuck around, Anderson stuck around, and the end of their careers were loaded with defeats.
Yeah.
And they weren't themselves.
Yeah.
And Anderson still trained like a beast, but he had his leg snapped in half, for God's sakes. And
he was unreal, wasn't he?
The best.
My God.
Now, you have the GOAT in Jon dominance, but my favorite fighter of all time is Anderson.
Absolutely.
Because he was the Matrix.
Yeah.
He was the Matrix. And the stuff he would do and the up kick on Lyoto or on Vitor, and then Lyoto did it to Randy Couture. The standing guillotine against Lyoto Machida in Toronto. He was just like, you know, Jon doing that was amazing. But then Anderson with his kicks. But Anderson was just so fun. And that Curitiba, man, shoot the box. Yeah. They're nasty strikers. And people ask me a lot when Anderson was going to start boxing. I said, well, this is different than Tyron Woodley boxing because Tyron Woodley is a wrestler. He didn't train his whole life as a striker. He developed his striking for mixed martial arts. But at the end of the day, that's not his first skill. You come from shoot the box and the Muay Thai and, you know, the violent striking there with Vanderlei and Shogun and Chris Cyborg. You look at them all and Shogun's, you know, younger brother Ninja. And those are trained killers on their feet. And that's why I was not doubting Anderson's skill set boxing because he's been a striker his entire life first.
Yeah. The world's best striker.
Yeah, no question.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
It was just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, he used to dog people and do this and that. And when Chris Weidman caught him, like Joe and I were like literally like, holy shit. Yeah. Like, and in all fairness, and I give full credit to Chris, he hit him. I don't believe in lucky punches. I believe in fortunate landings. Chris was trying to knock him out. He connected. It was a fortunate landing. It wasn't a lucky punch. Matt Serra beating George St. Pierre, that's not a lucky punch. That's a fortunate landing. Matt threw that punch and he caught him in the right place. So I'm very true to that. I don't think there's a lucky punch. I think, again, there's a fortunate landing to that punch because the punch is intended to finish your opponent. And when Chris caught him on the chin, it was like absolutely crazy. Yeah. Crazy. Because he was on a 16-fight winning streak at that point. Like, who knew?
How much do you think he was getting at peak?
Man, let me just put it this way.
Yeah.
We were in Rio many times for, you know, UFCs in Brazil.
Did you enjoy that in Brazil?
Oh, absolutely. I'm married to a Brazilian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Happy days.
Yeah. In my second time around, but yeah. So yeah, and she's a Silva. So I said to Vanderlei one time, I said, you know, I asked Anderson to marry me. You know, I asked Thiago Silva to marry me. I asked Bigfoot to marry me. And then I asked you. He goes, you did not. I go, no, Vanderlei asked you. And then Fernanda Silva finally said yes. And Vanderlei's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, what are you talking about, Goldie? Right? You know, and why did you ask me to marry you? Like, it was funny. It was funny. But every bus stop had Anderson as a spokesperson for Burger King. Yeah. Every single bus stop.
Wow.
So he was getting paid well for the pay-per-views. Yeah. He was getting paid well because he was sponsored. Yeah. But back home, he's the man.
Yeah.
He's the man. And when you're on every single bus stop with your picture and Burger King, That's where the money's made.
Yeah, you know you made
it.
it.
Yeah. When you're on a Burger King commercial, you've made it. You know. So you and I are waiting for Burger King to call, right?
Any big sponsor like that will take.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go back to Nylabone Dog Chews, like back in the olden days of UFC. That was actually one of the sponsors.
Yeah.
I had to say that.
Yeah, I remember.
Tonight's UFC brought to you by Nylabone Dog Chews. Like, what? And then corn nuts, corn to the core.
Yeah.
And Joe a couple times would be like, why do you say this?
Yeah.
Like, that's so silly.
Yeah.
I go, Joe, because it's on the card.
And they're paying.
Yeah. And that's
what we do.
They're paying. And so it's on the card. So I have to read that one, word for word.
Yeah.
You know?
Goldie.
Yeah.
I've really, really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you. I have as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love that you wanted to have me on.
Yeah.
I know how popular your podcast is here, and you've done a great job to do that, you and everyone who works on it. So it was an absolute honor when Joe Brown reached out and said, would you do the podcast? I'm like, absolutely, 1000%.
Happy days.
And then doing my homework on you, I know that, you're doing very well and people respect you. And so it's my honor to do this as well. And you pulling out the Conor was strong. That was strong. Yeah. Because that's one I'll keep forever.
Yeah.
What do you think of Conor McGregor? Well, what does he think of me? Fucking Mike Goldberg's back. Fucking Goldie. Fucking the best. Fucking shut your fucking face. Paulie, put a fucking stout in each ear. Shut your fucking face.
Brilliant. Before we finish off, give me your it's all over.
It is. Dodge, it's been an absolute pleasure. And for our entire crew, it is all over. Just like that.
You're a gentleman.
Thank you.
Quality, man. Good man. You're a gentleman. Thank you, Goldie.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
That was fun.
Woo! That was wicked. That was fun, mate. I really enjoyed that.
I did too.
What a lovely episode. That's my 280th episode.
Wow.
Individual people.
Yeah.